I think he's trying to get reconciliation before the king goes. I mean, he did obviously say in that BBC interview, I don't know how much longer my father has left, and obviously dropped a bunch more bombshells in that interview. It wasn't that long ago, so it's kind of crazy now that they're trying to share diary slots and trying to figure out how he can kind of get back in with the royal fold, because Queen Elizabeth II did say, you can't have it both ways. You can't be 1 foot in, 1 foot out royals. I don't want that. And I think that this is really betraying what she wanted for them. They need to choose. I just don't agree with this hybrid situation. They're like typical millennial royals who want to do like gig economy jobs in the royal family or something. I don't exactly know what their whole plan is. It's a very confused strategy. And I do agree that they've got a better team who's clearly trying to fashion something out of this. But I just think it's a very confused, dilapidated thing, and I don't see it going anywhere.
You don't think we'll see them in the room together? You don't think we'll see Harry and the King actually sit down in the coming months?
I think there's a chance we will, but I do think Charles is going to need to be slightly dragged into it. I think Charles got to a point after his diagnosis where I think he took a decision that he needed to protect his peace and that his younger son was causing him a significant amount of stress and anxiety in his life. And so he took a decision that he needed to focus on his health and getting back to the place that he needed to be. And that meant not exhaustingly spending all of his time kind of running around after Harry. And so Harry is going to have to show Charles that having a relationship is not going to be exhausting and draining for him. If Harry's serious about wanting to repair that relationship. And so it's going to have to be softly, and Harry's probably going to have to soak some stuff up along the way. Charles has soaked up a huge amount of pain, and without turned the other cheek, not fought back, except in small ways like Frogmore Cottage, taking Frogmore Cottage away. And it's Harry's turn. Harry's going to have to soak up a lot as well.
It's funny, just anecdotally, that's reminded me of one of the saddest lines in Spare that really stayed with me. It's right at the beginning. It's just really reminded me.
I already know what you're going to say, but say it.
I always think about it because it was before the King was diagnosed with cancer, as far as we know, because this goes back a couple of years. And Harry writes himself that Charles looked at him and William and said, "Please, boys, don't make my final years a misery." Now, I thought of that when you just said that, because it is. I mean, we've seen, assuming that Harry's account of that is true, which I mean, no reason to doubt that line. That does say a lot about his character and how he's viewing these final years, and then you add cancer to that, and that changes. Sorry, that just reminded me.
No, it's the fact that you even know that, because Spare was a publication full of dirty laundry of the royal family, something I don't think the King should just forget easily, and I certainly don't think William is going to forget easily. So the publication of Spare, what you know that he said, the nitty-gritty details of Harry's upbringing, that's stuff that you can't just sort of say, oh, I'm really sorry, but I'd like to be friends now. Sorry about that. I think that it is horrible. And I really, really think it's going to take a lot more from Harry's side and concessions coming from him. Like you said, the King made obviously a lot, but I didn't see a lot from Harry's side. So I just don't think he's actually mature enough to start accepting what his future might look like.
I actually think Charles has soaked up a lot at points from both his sons, a lot less from William, like certainly virtually nothing publicly, but I kind of, I feel quite sorry for Charles quite a lot of the time. I think he must have been in a really lonely position in a lot of periods of his life. They say it's lonely at the top. And he obviously, he had his reputation disintegrate during the Diana era, and I have huge sympathy for Diana. It's not that I'm taking Charles's side against her. I have massive sympathy for Diana. But then he comes out of that, and he has his sons trying to persuade him not to marry Camilla. I went through recently trying to look for quotes in which William was really praising Charles, and they are so much harder to find than you would expect. Like, he has said positive stuff, but during, Charles had this big, so in 2017, they had the 20th anniversary of Diana's death. William and Harry did loads about it. It was obviously very difficult for Charles. The following year, it was Charles's 70th birthday, and so there was a big drive from Clarence House at the time to try to kind of rehabilitate Charles, to use that as a vehicle to generate some positive publicity. And, in both the Diana period, the 2017 Diana period and the Charles 70th birthday period, there was precious little being said by his sons to help with that process. And actually, I think at that point, Harry probably did more than William did. Obviously, recent years have slightly undone some of that work.
Some of the credit, yeah.
But I just think, how lonely must that feel to be somebody who most of the people around you are your staff. You have this relationship with your sons that's defined by the kind of working environment that you live your entire life in and all the rivalries that come with it. Then, your younger son goes off to America and, tries to blow you up from afar. It must be
with
really
words.
With words. Yeah,
even the Angola trip, just a week ago, or a couple of weeks ago, that clashed with Camilla's birthday, which was cited as why they're now doing this sort of rapprochement or trying to do it. That's obviously, I don't think that was a clash that just happened. I think Harry knew exactly what he was doing, replicating his mother's pictures on Camilla's birthday, and knowing, as we can see from quotes in Spare, Camilla changed his old bedroom into her dressing room and all these feuds that run really deep. So I agree with you. I think there is conflict with both the sons, but yeah, Harry's definitely.
Yeah, I think it's a very complex family dynamic across the board. Obviously, certain aspects get a lot of attention, but you're right, there is a lot more to it. There's a lot of players involved. And speaking of other players being involved, we can't really mention Harry without Meghan. So there's an interesting claim about her time in the royal family, which has resurfaced from Valentine Lowe's royal biography, Courtiers. Now, we've had him on the show here. He's a wonderful source. And he alleged in it that Meghan had left a, quote, trail of evidence behind so that when the time came for Harry and Meghan to leave, she'd be able to say, look how they failed to support me. I want to ask, what do you make of this claim?
I'm sure she did. I think in some ways it's a rational thing to do. I think a lot of people would have done exactly that. I think the problem is not necessarily with Meghan doing that. The problem is actually with the way that Harry and Meghan kind of piled in quite relentlessly on the royals. And particularly, I do think that even the Oprah interview, they did botch it. Certain aspects of it were botched. Could have been done differently and better in a way that would be less toxic and destructive. For example, the racism allegation, they have clearly kind of tried to change it retrospectively or row it back. So obviously they botched, Meghan botched how she described that story. So I'm not, it's so insanely intense being a royal, for all of them, including William, including Kate. I actually don't think that it's a problem to be trying to collect these little bits and pieces as a safeguard to protect yourself. The problem is not the operation to protect herself. The problem was the operation to try to destroy everybody else, which didn't come out for several years. But there's always been this thing that Meghan's kind of intimated that she's got receipts. That was, in the days after Oprah, one of her friends went on ITV and said, we've got the receipts to prove everything. There was also a point where she was giving an interview and she said, I've never signed anything, so I can say whatever I want. So she's always had this tendency to give these kind of slightly veiled threats that she's sitting on this bombshell. There's one point I think they suggested they'd found their diaries that they kept during these periods. So they've always had been floating these ideas that they're sitting on a kind of a massive nuclear warhead that they can drop at any point. But ultimately, actually, they destroyed themselves by the way that they just basically relentlessly attacked Harry's own family in a context when no one was fighting back. And so they may well still be sitting on unused material that Harry says he'll never share. But it kind of doesn't matter anymore, because even if they did, they're so uniformly viewed as the villains, particularly in Britain. But even in America, they're not viewed in this protective way anymore. So even if they are sitting on some unexploded bombs, I don't actually think that the royals need to be too scared of it.